Good day, everyone. I am Clyde Rex de Salva, a faculty member of the Theology Department at Ateneo de Naga University. I will be your host moderator for this webinar, Fostering Responsible Digital Citizenship in the New Normal. To formally open our online event today, may I call on the University Choir for the Invocation.
Take, Lord, receive all my liberty, my memory, understanding, my entire will. Give me only your love and your grace, that's enough for me. Your love and your grace are enough for me. Take, Lord, receive all I haven't possessed. You have given all to me, now I return it. Give me only your love and your grace, that's enough for me. Your love and your grace are enough for me.
Thank you, University Choir, and their Program Director, Sir Joseph Reboriano. The Ateneo de Naga University's Office of Student Affairs, or OSA, is proud to present to you this third in the webinar series. This offering is made possible in cooperation with the Philippine Association of Practitioners of Student Affairs and Services, or PAPSAS, Region 5. This webinar is part of OSA's continuing program on student rights and responsibilities, which aims at helping the university achieve its mission to promote student welfare and ethics, and make the learning environment in person setting and virtual format more conducive. This program is nurtured by Jesuit education and Ignatian spirituality that seek the integral formation of men and women who will contribute to the total development of the family and human society. This year, OSA continues its advocacy of promoting responsible digital citizenship in response to the more pronounced and current trends and realities in the cyber world, affecting the students today, especially during this time, the new normal, where almost everything is being done online. This activity aims at empowering students to become responsible digital citizens through proper knowledge of relevant laws, etiquettes, and practical safety tips in using social media and other information and communication technologies. Let me share with you the schedule for today's webinar. There will be two parts. The first part is the talk of the three speakers. The second part will be our open forum. If you have any questions or comments or reactions to the presentation of the speakers, kindly post them on the comment section of our ADNO OSA Facebook. Please state your name, the school or organization you represent, and your brief questions, comments, or reactions. After the forum, we will address them through the respective speakers. E-certificates will also be given to those who pre-registered and who will accomplish evaluation form through a link to be given after the session. We hope that you would gain new and useful learning from this webinar. At this point, may I now call on the ADNO OSA Director of Student Affairs and Vice President of PAPSAS Region 5, Mr. Rodolfo S.B. Virtus Jr. to give us the welcome remarks.
Marhay na aldaw sa Indogabos. I am very pleased to welcome you to the third New Normal webinar series of the Ateneo de Naga University Office of Student Affairs. The pandemic may have shelved off our face-to-face conversations, seminars, workshops, and special events, but modern technology has connected us virtually and allowed us to pursue our mission while students stay safe at home. One consolation in this pandemic is that we have been able to reach out to more students outside the Ateneo with the help, of course, of the Philippine Association of Practitioners of Student Affairs and Services, or PAPSAS. In fact, the second webinar entitled Animating Student Organizations, which was held in July, and this third installment on Responsible Digital Citizenship are organized in cooperation with PAPSAS. So thank you, PAPSAS, for the opportunity to serve not only Bicol, but other students and SAS practitioners in other parts of the country as well. Now, the theme of today's webinar is quite relevant and urgent, so please allow me to share our rationale for choosing the theme. According to the Digital 2020 report of We Are Social in Hootsuite, Filipino users spend 9 hours and 45 minutes in the internet, the highest in the world. Further, Filipinos are also the world's most active social media users, averaging 3 hours and 53 minutes daily on at least one type of social media platform like Facebook and YouTube. This information is not surprising because the number of social media users in the Philippines, according to Statista.com, is 76 million in 2019, and 75 million Filipinos are on Facebook alone. In another report by the Pew Research Center, the young people are on social media, but we know this already, right? Specifically, 94% of the 18 to 29-year-old respondents in the said research use the internet. For more than a decade now, the use of social media applications has provided us ways to make life easier, more convenient, and more productive. Communication, work tools, travel arrangements, shopping, entertainment, name it, it is more likely offered online. In the last 5 months, the COVID-19 health crisis has transformed people's lives on an unprecedented scale. Work from home arrangements and online classes have been carried out to reinforce the minimum health standards. Hence, the need to depend on digital technology and innovation is greater than ever. Digital applications, for instance, have enabled instruction and learning to thrive in the new normal. However, like most things, digital technology is also susceptible to human misappropriation. Very often, we learn of a netizen whose social networking account is hacked, a schoolmate who experiences bullying online, a family member who lost money to a new credit card scam for the nth time, or a friend who shares fake news, if not rant using crude language. Add to these the growing cases of online sexual harassment, the fabrication of social media accounts, the libelous posts and hate speech you read every day. Indeed, as the pros of digital technology grow, so do the cons. But what do these mean for us and our students? Schools play a crucial role in teaching the youth on how to be ethical, critical, and productive technology users to counter the said dangers and threats and be models of responsible digital citizenship. We have to provide learning opportunities like webinars, orientation sessions, infographics, and other informative materials to educate our students, proactively protect them from the potential harms, and orient them on their rights and remedies should they fall victims to online offenders. Craft or update student handbooks policies to include the applicable provisions of related laws like the Safe Spaces Act, Data Privacy Act, and Cybercrime Prevention Act, among others. Activate help desk and other communication lines for reporting a possible breach of these laws and appropriate administrative procedures. Establish coordination with authorities or agencies for the investigation of more serious transgressions. After all, the school shall endeavor to make the environment conducive to learning. And this environment includes the digital platforms, which are our classroom today. The school shall form the students not only in terms of intellect, but also of character. The students too have a responsibility. By enrolling in our schools, the students commit to develop attitudes and manifest behaviors consistent with our respective missions. In the Ateneo, for instance, we form students who live out the profile of the university graduate. Specifically, this profile says that to exemplify compassionate commitment to change, the Atenean participates actively in the life of society and the global community and grows in consciousness of one's dignity and personal purpose in engaging the world. Our invitation is this: know your rights and do your responsibilities. The three talks today will inform us exactly your rights and responsibilities as digital citizens. So please watch and learn from this webinar. At this point, I would like to thank our speakers today, young leader attorney Dion Romano, my good friend attorney Eps Guiang, and Ateneo's very own Dr. Pines Bana. I also express my gratitude to my colleagues in the PAPSAS, Dr. Ian Loyola, National President, Sir Randy Iniego, Regional President, Dr. Ren Salcedo, National VP, Sir Andrew Macalma, Corporate Secretary of PAPSAS. Thank you to Team OSA, especially Ms. Janice Trasfalias, the organizer of this webinar. Diyos mabalus po sa Indogabos.
Thank you, Sir Sunny. Let me now introduce to you our first speaker. Our first speaker is a registered nurse and a young lawyer. She graduated from the University of the Philippines, Manila, with a degree in Bachelor of Science in Nursing. She pursued Juris Doctor at the Ateneo de Manila University School of Law and graduated as second honors. In the same university, she was a member of the Board of Editors of the Ateneo Law Journal. She was admitted to the Integrated Bar of the Philippines in 2018. At present, she is working as a junior associate at the Picazo, Buico, Tanfider, and Santos Law Offices, or Picazo Law. To talk about Safe Spaces Act, I now give you Attorney April Joy B. Guiang.
Good afternoon to the participants of today's webinar, which is entitled Fostering Responsible Digital Citizenship in the New Normal. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this webinar, and also I would like to commend the Ateneo de Naga University Office of Student Affairs and its partner, Philippine Association of Practitioners of Student Affairs and Services, Region 5, for organizing a series of webinars which are truthfully very relevant for today. So I will be talking about mainly about the Safe Spaces Act and how it is useful in our day-to-day lives now that we are in the new normal. So I will be sharing my screen. Okay. So my portion of the webinar will focus on the legal aspect of responsible digital citizenship, so to speak. And for this session, I will be mainly focusing on the relevant provisions in the Safe Spaces Act, which is usually also referred to as the Bawal Bastos Law. Okay, so why is this important? Um, I think that's the first question that we need to be able to answer, and I hope that this why will be one of the reasons why you will be focusing on today's discussion. So I don't know if this is the same with all of you who are participants of this webinar, but during the ECQ period and the MECQ period, I noticed that I have been spending more time online. So I've been using a lot of social media apps. So we have Facebook, Twitter. For a time, I tried TikTok, and during my free time, I watch a lot of YouTube videos as well. And I think um, people of all ages have so much time in their hands that more often than not, they're on Facebook or YouTube. So, given this um, general circumstances that we have right now, I think it is very important for us to know what are our responsibilities as consumers of social media. And that's there's no better way to understand those rights or those responsibilities other than by looking into this law. So the full title of Bawal Bastos Law, quote unquote, is this. It's a very long title. So the full title reads, An Act Defining Gender-Based Sexual Harassment in Streets, Public Spaces, Online, Workplaces, and Educational or Training Institutions, providing protective measures and prescribing penalties therefore. And I've highlighted online because that's what's relevant to us for today. But just a quick backgrounder. So this law was actually passed in just recently, August 2019. And then a few months after that, the implementing rules and regulations have been issued. And most of well, the intention of this law is quite similar to an older law, which is the anti-sexual harassment law. But there are a few provisions that are unique to this law. So the first one is, as you can see in the title, they have, and by they I mean legislators, the members of our Congress, has defined and specified what are so-called personal places of safety. So these are streets, public spaces. The context for this is, of course, we know that there are a lot of incidents of catcalling. So this law was passed particularly to address that. There's also um, as online because of, well, the growing use of technology for communication purposes. And of course, we have workplaces that also included in the older law, which is the anti-sexual harassment law. So we go to the possible persons, or the persons who may be involved in one way or another with this law. And the first are, who are the possible offenders? And the answer to that is any person. So the reason why I'm highlighting that is because before, when the only law that has been addressing sexual harassment is the anti-sexual harassment law, there's a specific list of persons who can be prosecuted for for sexual harassment acts. These are, well, they've included teachers, professors, coaches, trainers, or persons with moral ascendancy, influence, and or authority over their victims. So it's a bit more restrictive, more limited as compared to what we have in the Bawal Bastos law. And now in this law, it's any person. So you don't have to establish influence, authority, moral ascendancy for the offender to be convicted. So what is the general message for that? So it is important that we understand that if, for example, you are consuming social media, you, regardless of who you are you're a potential offender of this law. So the message is that we should all be discerning and careful of what we post or comment in social media. So, and the underlying general reminder also to be respectful of everyone, regardless of their age, their social status, their gender or sexual orientation. We should afford respect to people who we are communicating with in social media. So that's a general message that we should be observing. I think that's how we can translate the law into actual practice, so to speak. And on the other end are the possible victims. So who are the possible victims? And the answer to that is the same. It's also any person. And why are we highlighting this? First, the reason for this is that, number one, we should be vigilant. So knowing that we can be victims of different kinds of online sexual harassment, we should be very vigilant, and we should also know our rights. And not only that, knowing our rights and asserting our rights. So later on in our discussion, I will be highlighting what are the possible remedies available to victims of online sexual harassment, because that's the focus of this webinar. So I think that's a general message also for possible victims, which is practically anyone who posts online, anyone who uses social media. So we move on to what is GOSH. Also, well, GOSH is the abbreviation for gender-based online sexual harassment. So just going into the definition, a little bit technical. So GOSH refers to an online conduct targeted at a particular person that causes or is likely to cause another person mental, emotional, or psychological distress and fear of personal safety and sexual harassment acts. So as compared to the other kinds of sexual harassment that are punishable in the Bawal Bastos law, general, I mean, GOSH refers to those that are committed online, so over the internet, over the web. So say, for example, an act of sexual harassment is done in TikTok. So say, for example, one posts or comment, no, there's no comment in TikTok, I think. Okay, so if, for example, in Facebook, um, a person, say a lady, posts something and another person comments sexist jokes or anything, any comment that is insulting and has sexual connotations, or say, for example, someone stalks another person on Facebook or any other online app, then that will be considered as GOSH, or gender-based online sexual harassment, and it will be punishable under this law. So we have here an enumeration of specific punishable acts under the Bawal Bastos law, but in no way is this restrictive. So there could be other acts that are punishable under the law, but are not listed here specifically. So as long as the act will be falling under the definition that I have mentioned earlier, then that person will be convicted of violating the Bawal Bastos law. So GOSH would include acts that use ICT, so information communication technology, in terrorizing and intimidating victims through, number one, physical, psychological, and emotional threats, unwanted sexual, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist remarks and comments online, whether publicly or through direct and private messages. So as I have mentioned earlier, if, say, for example, let's pick one. So the transphobic remarks. So say, for example, these would include statements, messages, or comments that are insulting to trans people. Or yeah. So there are also sexual misogynistic remarks. So under this general category would fall those which are prejudice, or those with those which connote discrimination against women, or statements that assume that men are inherently and naturally superior. Sorry, men are superior over women. So anything that highlights discrimination against women, and that is translated into a message directed to the victim, and that's also a GOSH act. Also included here is the invasion of the victim's privacy through cyber stalking. So if someone keeps on messaging another person and incessantly or unstoppably messages sexist jokes or sexist comments, sexist messages, or anything that would include statements that indicate hatred or prejudice or discrimination against women or against the LGBTQI, that is also a punishable act. Here, the next would be the uploading and sharing without the consent of the victim, and that's of course important that the uploading is without the consent of the victim. And this contains photos, voice, or video with sexual content. Next is any unauthorized recording and sharing of the victim's photos, videos, or information online, impersonating identities of victims online, or posting lies about victims to harm their reputation, and that's called online identity theft, or filing false abuse reports to online platforms to silence their victims. So these are specific acts that are punishable under the law. So, what are the penalties if a person will be convicted of um, violating the Bawal Bastos law? And there, so if a person is convicted of violating the Bawal Bastos law, so we have several remedies here. So the victim can file a case in court for violation of the Bawal Bastos law. And if the offender will be convicted, possible penalties would be number one, imprisonment for a period of 2 years, 4 months, and 1 day, up to, sorry, there's a typo there, so up to 4 years and 2 months. Or a fine worth 100,000 to 500,000 pesos, or the judge can also choose to impose both imprisonment and fine. And the next would be the payment of civil damages. So it is provided in the law that the victim is not limited or is not prohibited from filing a separate action for for him or her to recover civil damages. Say, for example, for um, moral stress or for sleepless nights that he or she has experienced because of the commission of gauche acts. And then any fees to be charged in the course of a victim's availment of counseling services, so psychological counseling services, will also be shouldered by the offender. And what's interesting about this law, specifically for gauche, is that gauche is imprescriptible. So what does that mean, and what is the implication of that? So as stated there, in gauche, merong forever. So it just means that the offended party or the victim can file the case against the offender at any point in time. So there's no deadline for the filing as compared to the other acts that are defined in the Bawal Bastos law. So some of the other acts in the Bawal Bastos law, which are not committed in an online platform, those have prescriptive periods. So some have 5 years. So after the 5 year period has run out, the victim can no longer file a case, at least for this particular law, against the offender. So 2 points. Number one, if you are the offended party, then you should be mindful that you have that remedy. You will have these remedies of filing a case against against the offender at any point in time. So you can assert your right, at least to that extent, at any time. On the other hand, we should also be educating our students and those who, practically everyone, that gosh is imprescriptible, and that means that if you're an offending party, you would live forever. Like, as long as you live, someone can go to court and file a case against you for violating this law. So just imagine posting or commenting something sexist, something that is discriminatory to women, to LGBTQI, to men online, and that will forever haunt you. So I think that's the value of highlighting this. Also on the penalty provision side, so if you have noticed, I have been highlighting those which are those provisions of the law which are focused on penalties, because that's where you can see or appreciate, at least for that's where we can appreciate the remedies available. So remedies slash the rights that are available to victims. And that also emphasizes the deterring factors that is incorporated in this law. So as you can see here, there is nothing in the Bawal Bastos law which prevents LGUs from coming up with ordinances that impose heavier penalties for GOSH. And I think several LGUs have already incorporated, even prior to the passage of this law, they've incorporated certain provisions in their ordinances which address uh, at, then at the time penalties for, let's say, for example, catcalling. So the idea behind this is that the legislators understood and appreciated that they cannot legislate for each and every scenario for each and every LGU. So they've left that prerogative for LGUs to come up with ordinances that define higher penalties for GOSH depending on the circumstances that are present in that particular LGU. And then also highlighting here the possible higher penalties that may be imposed on violators. So if the victim or the offended party is diagnosed with a mental condition tending to impair consent, or if the victim is a minor, then the judge has the prerogative to impose higher penalties. So if I could just go back, so the original range here of 2 years, 4 months, and 1 day to up to 4 years and 2 months could be increased by the judge. Minor students, on the other hand, who are found to have committed acts of GOSH shall only be held liable for administrative sanctions by the school as stated in their school handbook. So later on, we will be discussing that school heads actually have the responsibility to integrate these GOSH-related provisions into the school handbook. So I think that would be very interesting also for the participants of this webinar. I hope I haven't lost you yet on that. I haven't lost you. Okay, so so the next would be the psychological support to victims. So any victim of GOSH may avail of psychological counseling services with the aid of the LGU and the DSWD. So for psychological support, victims should be advised to go to their respective LGUs and to the DSWD branch present in their locality to avail of the psychological counseling services. And as mentioned earlier, it will be the offending party who will shoulder the fees for availing these services. Okay, so going now to the second portion of this webinar, I will be detailing the responsibilities of schools as enumerated or as specified in the Bawal Bastos law. So all schools, whether public or private, should educate students from the elementary to tertiary level about the provisions of the Bawal Bastos law and how they can report cases of GOSH committed against them. Actually, this is a general instruction to schools for them to instruct or to educate their students about reporting cases of gender-based sexual harassment. So either it's committed online or offline, so to speak. Then these schools have that responsibility. So in relation to that, where should the dead parties or the victims report. So there are several options, but the identified point identified agency, which is primarily responsible for the enforcement of the GOSH aspect, so to speak, of the Bawal Bastos Law is the PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group, or PNP-ACG. So they're the ones who are receiving GOSH complaints, aided by an online mechanism for reporting real-time GOSH acts and then facilitating the apprehension of perpetrators or of violators. So other than PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group, um, victims can also approach PNP Women and Children's desks and the Women and Children Protection Center. Although the Women and Children Protection Center is based in Manila, so in Naga, it would be most efficient and most logical to be approaching the PNP and children PNP Women and Children's Desks. And the last one would be the school designated office or officer in charge. So as will be discussed later, the school heads have the obligation to designate such point person. So I've also summarized here the specific responsibilities of school heads with respect to the implementation of the Bawal Bastos Law. So um, these responsibilities may be grouped into three general headings. So the first would be information dissemination, second is preventive measures, and the third would be institutionalization. So how should the school disseminate information relating to the Bawal Bastos Law? So this is the first umbrella, first group. So school heads or the school admin should disseminate or post a copy of the Bawal Bastos Law and its implementing rules and regulations, which are both available online in a place easily visible to students through official notices. So I imagine, like say for example, in the OSA or the admin office, there will be a billboard or an area where the school admin posts like notices and important memo and other modes of official communication. And the law also highlights that it should be posted. I mean, the law should be posted where the students usually congregate. So the idea behind this is that um, the information dissemination campaign should have the widest reach possible. So, so other than that, another possible mode of disseminating a copy of the law is dissemination online. So, for example, if the school has an official Facebook account or an official Twitter account, then the law could be posted there. Of course, the law, along with a short and briefer or FAQ on the law, would be helpful. So, or you could also post this in an official school website. The law can, the school, I should say, can also conduct orientations on the law or something like this webinar that we're having, and also circulating information materials such as mentioned, primers and FAQs. The law also encourages having a translated version of the law because the idea behind it is that there should be understanding of the particular acts that are punishable under the law, the remedies available to the victims, and so on and so forth. So the second umbrella would be, second heading, I should say, is how can schools encourage the prevention of GOSH? So the law suggests different measures to prevent gender-based sexual harassment in general. So not just gosh, but the general type in the school, like information campaigns, express or explicit inclusion in the student handbook of measures that prevent GOSH, orientation of student organizations, and training of members of the school community. And that includes not only teachers, not only professors, not only students, but even the non-teaching staff. So all members of the school community should be included in this training. Second would be that the school should ensure that all students will receive age-appropriate training on gender sensitivity and gender and development topics. The last would be the institutionalization, which I think is, at least for me, the most important one, because here the school will be creating mechanisms in order to institutionalize and put into place policies that will help in achieving the objective of the law. So number one would be the creation of an independent internal mechanism to investigate and address complaints of gender-based sexual harassment, and then provision and dissemination in consultation with members of the school community of a code of conduct or school policy which shall reiterate the prohibition on gender-based sexual harassment, prescribe the procedures for the internal mechanism created under the law, and setting of administrative penalties. So administrative penalties can include, say for example, if the offender is a student, that would include suspension or hindi makakakuha ng diploma yung student, or expulsion. So these are the administrative penalties. And also administrative penalties on the side of, say for example, teachers. So also suspension, salary deduction, or any form of administrative penalty which the school deems fit. The last would be the designation of an office or person to receive complaints of sexual harassment, as we have mentioned also earlier. So more on the code of conduct. Heads of educational institutions should develop a code of conduct in consultation with the student council. So I believe we are also joined by student leaders and members of the student council. So for you guys, you have the opportunity to voice out your concerns to the heads of the schools and relate to them your concerns which relate to the implementation of this law. So the code of conduct ideally should include the definition of gender-based sexual harassment, its coverage, forms, classifications, and the penalties, when and where it may be committed and by whom. These have been discussed earlier also. And then specified the procedures in the filing, investigation, and resolution of cases within the school level, and then specifying the functions, composition, and qualifications of the members of the CODI. That's what they call it, the Committee on Decorum and Investigation. And the code of conduct should also include the penalties in case members of the committee do not perform or inadequately perform their functions, as defined also in the code of conduct. So knowing these responsibilities is important, not only because, well, number one, the goal of the law is really commendable, but also there's a second factor for this, and that's the monitoring by CHED. So under the law, CHED is mandated to do regular spot checks, so regular spontaneous inspections to ensure that schools are complying with the provisions of the law, and the school heads are doing their functions also as enumerated and as described in the law. And CHED is also required to include consultations with student leaders, student councils in the conduct of their inspection. If school heads, teachers, instructors will not perform their duties, as I have discussed earlier, that those falling under the three general headings, they may be punished by a fine worth 5,000 to 10,000 pesos. So that's a lot of money for the teachers and school heads to pay, for them to pay. And for failure to act on reported acts of gosh committed in the school, that would also be punishable by a fine amounting to 10,000 to 15,000 pesos. So imagine being required to pay that and being possibly administratively liable for not implementing the duties as mentioned earlier. So I guess that's it for our discussion on the Bawal Bastos Law. Bawal Bastos Law. I hope that you have somehow picked something or learned something from this session. And again, thank you to the organizing committee, and thank you to the participants of this webinar for hopefully listening. And I hope you apply the things that you have learned in this webinar. So I guess if somewhere in the middle of the quite technical discussion, I lost your attention, basically the message of the law and the message of this presentation is simple. And that is for two kinds of persons. So number one, if you are a person who posts a lot of content or posts a lot of comments or videos online, you should be very vigilant, and you should know your rights, and you should assert your rights. And number two, if you are the type of person who's a bit reckless in posting comments, then you should be more mindful of what you say in social media, and generally just be respectful and kind to everyone, and avoid any discriminatory posts on social media. So I guess that's it. Thank you very much for listening to this webinar.
Thank you, Attorney Guiang. It is reassuring that we have laws like the Safe Spaces Act, which protects everyone, especially women, from sexual harassment, both in physical and online spaces, and not just by persons in authority. Our second speaker is a lawyer, bar exam coach, and an advocate of good governance. He graduated cum laude from Universidad de Santa Isabel in 2011 with a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communications. He obtained his law degree from University of Santo Tomas, Faculty of Civil Law, and passed the bar, landing within top 10% of successful takers in 2018. From 2011 to 2016, he served as Constituency Coordinator in the International Center for Innovation, Transformation, and Excellence in Governance. In 2018 and 2019, he worked at the Office of the Vice President of the Philippines as Program Officer and as Office Attorney. Currently, he works at the Legal Rights and Natural Resources Center. He is also a bar exam coach at the Jurist Bar Review Center. Further, he is the program manager of the Ateneo School of Government, the public sector arm of the Ateneo de Manila University. As program manager, his main responsibility is to oversee the implementation of Project Portfolio, specifically the governance and research programs for the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Without further ado, to talk about cybercrime and data privacy, please welcome Attorney Dion, Lorenz, L. Romano.
So I'll be presenting two relevant laws this afternoon. One is the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012 and the Data Privacy Act. But before I start with presenting the salient provisions of the law, let me first give you the landscape of the digital world. The title of this presentation is The Digital Revolution, heightened by the new normal. We all transitioned already to the new normal, and because of the lockdown and the limited mobility outside, many people have shifted their activities to online. And later on, I will be connecting why the web connectivity or the digital world creates many more cybercrimes, and why the web connectivity makes our data or information about ourselves vulnerable to abuse or violation. Two areas, the cybercrime and the data privacy, are already covered by a national law, which is the Cybercrime Prevention Act and the Data Privacy Act. But we will see later the specific acts of punishable by these acts and how the digital world or the shift the laws more relevant today. So this is the data from Hootsuite, which I also encourage you to follow because they are updating annually or even more frequently. In the world, 51 or more than 50% of the population are actually using social media. So there are recorded 3.96 billion active social media users in the world. And the 3.91 billion of that use data and the result of their research about digital or online. So this is the recent data last July 2020. I'll just be showing you that mobile phones for their social media activities. So imagine kung ilang billions yung population ng mundo, more than 50% of that are using social media. And in this slide, you can also see that social media is being used as source of news. Actually, this data is arranged per age bracket, and we can see from age to 18 to 24 years old, 67% depend their taasang dependency sa social media as their source of news. Here, the next source of news in social media. And across all ages, mataas yung dependency of the population. Data that you can see is the world's most used social media platforms. Of course, number one, Facebook, followed by YouTube, and the rest are the messaging app. We have WhatsApp, Messenger, WeChat. Of course, TikTok, mas lalong pumatok lalo na ngayong lockdown, di ba? Naging uso yung TikTok, and many of the users are using TikTok para pampaalis ng kanilang bagot or yung para hindi maboring sa bahay. So, and this platforms, social media platforms, later on, we'll see how this make our personal data more vulnerable to abuse. And more interestingly, because of the COVID-19, where many forms of lockdown have been implemented, sa Pilipinas lang, maraming from ECQ to GCQ to MECQ at iba't iba pang forms of lockdown. Marami talagang mga tao sa bahay lang, and because they cannot do their regular outside or physical activities, tumaas talaga yung gamit ng social media. The average use of social media because of COVID-19 was 43%. But look, in the Philippines, sobrang taas yung increase. that reaches 64% of the increase from the time or from the pre-COVID time. And I think personally also, we can attest to this because kahit yung sa personal observations natin, malaki din talaga yung increase ng paggamit natin ng social media. Hindi lang social media, lahat ng mga activities on internet, tumaas siya. Lahat ng mga meetings, ngayon kinakandak na sa Zoom. Even this seminar, kinakandak na via Zoom and other online platforms. So kaya understandably, mataas yung increase. But tayo pa rin yung number one. Philippines pa rin yung pinakamataas na increase at the time of COVID-19. So ito yung landscape of the social or digital world that we have now. And we can see later on how this shift to online or digital world, yun nga, makes our data and other crimes committed intensively. So in the Philippines, the cybercrime in the Philippines, this is also a data from Department of Justice. The cybercrime law was passed in 2012. But before that, they already conducted a survey and 87% of the Filipino said that they have been using internet for their activities, and they identified themselves as victims of crimes and other malicious activities committed online or with the use of the information and communications technology. And from 2003 to 2012, according to the data of the CIDG, merong reported na 2,778 cases of computer-related crimes. So, kumbaga, na-perpetuate yung mga crimes through the use of the information and communications technology. Hence, our legislature passed this law in order to fill the gap and to solve this problem of proliferation of crimes using ICT or the information communication technology. So now, let me discuss first the public policy of the cybercrime prevention. The law recognizes the vital role of the information and communication industries. Of course, it makes our life easier, it makes our transaction more efficient. Because of the information and communication technology, we can connect to anyone in the world. Mas napapadali yung communications, mas napapadali yung mga bagay-bagay in general. It's easy, it's free, maraming mga gadgets that we can use in order to use this platform. But because of the increase in the activity in the online, naging ano din siya, mataas din yung misuse and abuse of this platform. And so therefore, kailangan ng batas that would effectively prevent and combat such offenses. And yung batas na yon ay dapat effective in a way that it will detect the cyber crimes being committed, that it will facilitate the investigation of these crimes, and eventually prosecute kung sino yung mga nag-violate or nag-commit ng mga acts considered as cyber crimes. That segues me to my next slide, which is the acts which are punishable under the Cybercrime Prevention Act. So I arrange this per category doon sa specific crimes, but inarrange na lang natin siya. Of course, the general, anything that violates confidentiality and integrity and availability of computer data and system, that would fall under the cybercrime. More specifically, all computer-related offenses such as forgery, fraud, identity theft. Ito yung mapapansin yung, di ba, yung mga phishing email. Akala nyo nag-email sa'yo yung isang bank or halimbawa BPI or BDO, and then you click that link and you were asked to log in, and you're not aware that email, that link is actually fraudulent link, and then you provided your username and password, and then later on you discovered there are unauthorized charges or debit from your account. So yun yung fraud, and it's computer-related offense because they use information and communication technology to be able to perpetrate that act. So yan, identity theft naman yung paggamit nung, di ba, pag nag-log in ka, like example sa TikTok or sa other mga social media accounts, hindi naman natin binabasa yung fine print, yung terms and conditions. Go lang tayo ng go. Pero there are also accounts, like halimbawa sa Facebook, di ba, usong-uso yung mga quiz, IQ test, yung mga ganon, personality test. But we are not very keen on looking at the terms and conditions, and we voluntarily divulge our personal information. And later on, nako-compromise yung data, yung personal data natin. And sometimes it's being used to, yun nga, for this illegal activities. I, for one, became a victim of unauthorized charges in my credit card na bakit ako nagbabayad ng 2 Spotify, one being charged abroad. Yan pala, may naklik akong link, I was not very keen on reading the terms and conditions, nagamit yung account ko. Ginamit yung identity ko and yung credit card account ko dun sa kanyang personal. So, but I was able to detect that because I monthly check my expenses using my card. So, na-report agad. But for some people that are not very hindi aware na meron palang mga ganitong nangyayari, nagiging vulnerable yung data natin for abuse. And the next category is the content-related offense. Ito naman, it looks into the content rather than yung mismong use of the information technology. So ito, like example, sex, child pornography, unsolicited commercial communications, and libel. Yung cyber libel is, kumbaga, hot topic yan 2 months ago because of the conviction of Maria Ressa using this law. Unsolicited commercial communications naman, di ba may matatanggap kayong mga text, mga promotional text from kung kani-kaninong corporation, or most likely yung mga nag-o-offer ng mga promos, or ito karamihan na experience natin sa mga telecom companies na may mga ganung promo. Sometimes they even call you and you wonder how they get our number. Of course, nandun nga yan sa when we apply for mga ganitong mga bagay, we voluntarily give our information to them. So, yan. And next, yung punishable acts under Cybercrime Prevention Act. Yung kapag nag-abet or nag-aid ka or tumulong ka doon sa pag-commit ng crime using the technology, you can be also held liable. And all crimes, of course, in the revised penal code or other special laws na gumamit ng ICT or the information communication technology, lahat ng crimes na nakasaad doon sa ating revised penal code. Kapag gumamit ka ng ICT to commit that crime, then pwede kang yung penalty that you will suffer is 1 degree higher. So, yun yung consequence. Kumbaga, mas tumaas yung penalty. So, this is the first part of my presentation, which is the cybercrime. And now I will go on to the second part, which is the data privacy. This is the second part of my presentation. The second law which I was asked to discuss, the Data Privacy Act, but this has a particular connection to the legal implication to educational institutions' policy on data gathering. I actually presented this in one of the seminars hosted by PAPSAS last year, and I think this presentation is still relevant for this webinar. So I will just be using this. Let me begin with the public policy of the law. Of course, the state or the government protects the personal data of all the citizens. And at the same time, ensuring the free flow of the information for the national development. Because, of course, data, personal data or digital data in particular, is one of the most valuable commodities, especially ngayong panahon na lahat na online. Okay, so the scope of the law, it's actually applies to all kind of processing of data, either by the government or private institutions, including the higher educational institutions such as Ateneo. What is data privacy? So data privacy is basically the right of the person not to disclose his or her information and to live free from surveillance. kumbaga nakafocus ito sa right ng tao na hindi siya pilitin na i-disclose yung kanyang personal information. But, of course, dahil nga, kung makikita nyo, babalikan ko, dun sa public policy, ang una ay to protect the data of the citizen or the person. But of course, recognizing na yung information is necessary for national development. So, hindi naman pwedeng lahat ng tao ay i-invoke na lang yung kanilang data privacy. So, may way naman para ma-extract yung information from the person. And kaya i-discuss natin yung detalye how government or other private institutions can extract the data in compliance with the Data Privacy Act. Sinong covered nito? I-limit na lang muna natin sa educational institutions. So, ang covered nito ay, of course, students, the teaching personnel, and non-teaching personnel. Is the right to privacy granted by the Constitution? So, it's a basic question. Of course, maisip natin, oo, ano yan, fundamental right yan. But to be really specific about it, it's not specifically granted by the Constitution, but it is implicit in the Bill of Rights. Then, di ba, sa wala naman nakalagay talagang right to data, privacy, but implicit na yun dun sa Bill of Rights natin to privacy in general. There are three strands of the right to privacy. We have the locational or situational privacy, kung saan ka nakatira, yung privacy mo sa bahay mo, yan yung ibig sabihin ng locational or situational. We have informational, which is the information about yourself, your name, phone number, everything about your personal data. And of course, decisional. How do you decide? How do you decide? What activities do you go into either sa offline or online? So, yan yung three strands of right to privacy. And what are the rights of data subject? Yung data subject, ito yung kinukunan ng data. So we have the right, all of the citizens have the right to be informed, the right to access yung data about ourselves. Siyempre, halimbawa, pag nag-register ka sa isang program, sa school or sa organization, you have the right to be informed before the organization solicits personal data. Kailangan informed ka na kukunin nila yung data and for what purpose they will be using that data. And because you have that right, concurrently, you have the right to access kasi ikaw nagbigay ng data na yon. Ngayon, you have the right to access that data. You have the right to file complaint kapag ginamit yung data mo sa malicious na activity or merong negligence doon sa paghawak or sa pag-restore ng data. May right ka rin to object na hindi disclose yung sensitive information about yourself. And the right to erasure kapag naka-encode na yan sa database, because you have the right to access this data, you have also the right to erase that information that you previously given. So yan yung mga rights ng data subject. Another right also yung right to damages kasi syempre kapag na-disclose yung information about yourself, nasira yung reputation mo, then you have action for damages against the information who collected that data. You also have the right to rectify, to correct the errors. Halimbawa, binigay mo yung voluntarily, you give the personal data, but there are errors in the encoding, you have the right to rectify or correct the errors. Data portability, yung pag-transfer ng data from like offline to online. Right to transfer the rights of your personal data is also one of the rights of the data subject. Ano naman yung limitation ng rights? Syempre, sa mga statistics and research purposes, syempre pag nag-survey yung PSA, hindi mo pwedeng i-invoke na ay hindi ko i-disclose ilan yung anak ko or ano yung income ko or ganyan. Because of course, 'di ba, babalikan natin yung public policy, while the state protects the data or information about the person, they also recognize that such information is vital for national development. So hindi pwedeng, ito yung balanse naman, kasi gagamitin naman siya sa statistic and research purposes. Sa investigation ng mga criminal, administrative, and tax liability, so hindi pwedeng i-invoke mo yung data privacy right mo, lalo na kapag nasangkot ka sa mga ganitong cases. Right to privacy and academic freedom, because this is relevant to academic institution. So, of course, how do we find the balance of, example, the right of the students to their personal information, and of course, the academic freedom of the institution para efficiently and effectively ma-deliver din nila yung learning to the students. So, kailangan balanse yung dalawang rights na yan. And now, data privacy, ano yung mga common scenarios in schools na nagkakaroon ng violation? Disclosure by negligence. So, di ba, sa enrollment or any program that we signed up for, so may attendance sheet yan or any login na ibibigay natin yung personal information. Tapos, hindi pala secure yung storage ng data. Kumalat siya. Nag-leak yung data because there are no systems or safeguard mechanism, then the school or the organization will be negligent and may liability yan. Disclosure by legal compulsion. Syempre, pag related nga dun sa mga investigation of a criminal offense or investigation of, halimbawa, may na-commit na violations sa school. So, pwedeng maging ano din yan, pwedeng maging exception. Data breach by system or failure. Halimbawa, yun nga sa website ng school, meron, di ba meron tayong, or sa mga login, sa computer subjects, tapos na hack yung system because of the failure or the insufficiency of the safeguard mechanism, then there could be a liability there. Personal information controller. So may naka-assign yan per institution kung sino yung tao or an organization or a unit in the university or organization na nagko-control ng pag-process ng data, yung pag-store ng data, pag-disclose ng data. Actually, may mga trainings din dyan that government conducts para lang mas maintindihan yung proseso. Kung paano i-collect, i-store, i-disclose yung data. 3 kinds of information, very quickly. We have personal information, basically the name, personal information about ourselves. Sensitive information, these are more, kumbaga, not apparent. So ito yung ethnic lineage, your medical records. So yan naman yung mga kinds of sensitive information. Privileged information, of course, the information between client, halimbawa, doctor and patient communication or information, the lawyer and the client information or communication. So, yan yung mga iba't ibang klaseng information. And per kind of information, iba-iba din yung treatment dyan. Like for sensitive information, kailangan ng explicit consent from the data subject before the information can be collected and stored and disclosed. Pag personal information, pwedeng not implicit. But syempre, halimbawa, nag-enroll ka sa school. Of course, ibibigay mo yung personal information mo. So, kumbaga, dun sa act of you registering or enrolling, you're actually giving your personal information para ma-process yung enrollment. So, personal information, again, very quickly, name, address, age, birth date, contact number. Yung sensitive information, as mentioned, ito yung race, ethnicity, marital status, age, color, your health, education, your sexual life, court proceedings. Ito yung kumbaga mas mas intricate, mas hindi yung apparent na nakikita or nalalaman about the data subject. Yung mga government issued numbers mo. Example, yung more recently, yung when Mayor Nieto of one of the municipalities in Rizal posted yung medical record of one of the frontliners na namatay. Doon nakalagay yung SSS number niya, yung PhilHealth number niya. So, unwittingly, pinost yun for information purposes. Pero, na-disclose yung sensitive information. So ang tanong doon, may liability ba? So of course, debatable yon kasi you have to go into the motive of posting. But the fact of disclosing that sensitive information, there's a breach to the right of the person to be secured on their information. Sensitive information can be established by an executive order or by law. Privileged information, I already told you a while ago, yung sa lawyer-client, doctor-patient, public office, penitent clergy, and spousal privilege. Ito, some of the offices in the university that are affected by DPA. Actually, lahat ng offices. But ito yung common, kumbaga, na where the subject matter, example, the students, give their personal information to process application or enrollment or any activity. Data processing principles, of course, kailangan transparent. So, dapat alam ni data subject, ano yung, aware siya kung ano yung nature, ano yung purpose and extent of the data or the personal information na ipoprocess. And gagamitin siya for lawful purposes. And of course, dapat proportional. Halimbawa, mag-audition lang naman sa isang organization, halimbawa dance troupe or debate, bakit pa kakailangan ba doon yung ethnicity? Kailanganin ba doon yung medical records? Hindi naman. So, hindi yung proportional. So, these are the principles that have to be complied with in processing data from the data subject. It must be transparent, it must be lawful, and proportional. What do these principles entail? So all information must be collected for reasons that are specific. So dapat nakalagay, 'di ba, dapat sa mga registration sheets, nakikita sa taas pa lang yung data. Meron naman na yung template, the data privacy, that nakasaad doon na by signing up to this login sheet, I hereby give my consent to the processing of data, blah, 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 blah. So naka-specify doon ano yung reasons, anong purpose, and para saan siya gagamitin. It must be handled properly, meaning that may question nga na, di ba sa mga login sheet, makikita mo yung mga tao na nagsa-sign up. So, yun ba yung handling of that data is proper, na yung other registrants after you makikita yung data about yourself kasi ikaw nauna doon sa sheet. So, debatable naman yun. But itong sinasabing handling, yung pag-store ng data, pag-convert ng hard copy data into online or digital copy, dapat meron diyang system kung paano at saan siya sa store at sino lang yung may access. Yan yung proper handling. And third, it must be discarded in a way that it's not accessible to unauthorized third parties. Halimbawa, yung mga nag-graduate na, ano yung policy on that? Hanggang ilang years lang yung pag-store ng data, and after that, paano i-discard? Paano i-dispose yung date information about the subject matter. So, dapat merong clear policy din yan yung school. So, paano yung timeline ng data treatment? Of course, it starts with the consent. So, sa mga registration, before you collect data, nasa taas dapat yan, yung consent form, para safe yung person collecting data, that before he or she solicits the data, may consent na data subject. Second is yung fair and lawful processing ng data. So, syempre, dyan na magiging relevant yung proportionality. So, kung mag-audition or magre-register lang naman sa isang program, dapat yung tama lang na information that you may need to be able to get the data from the participants. Data quality, of course, importante din yan para alam natin for what purpose, ano yung saan siya isi-save, and saan gagamitin in the future. Retention, kung yan, there's a storage. And then the safety measures also, ano yung assurance that this data will be used only for legitimate purpose. So yan yung timeline ng data treatment. And how long is data retention? Sabi ng batas, for as long as necessary. But some of the institutions have their own policy in compliance with the government memorandum. Depende sa kind of institutions. Registration and compliance, ito I will just skip this because this is very detailed. The purpose of this registration and compliance is that to ensure na yung mga institutions that need to be registered ay nasa database din ng government. Para din, they know kung may accountability or in the future, meron silang mahahabol. Okay, sige. Data breach. The commission and the data subject shall be notified within 72 hours. Halimbawa, dati di ba yung COMELEC data before the 2016 elections, biglang nanahack siya. So dapat kung may similar incident with the private institutions na nagkaroon ng data breach, they must be the subject must be informed within 72 hours of that breach. And in case of delay to notify, the commission may investigate kung ano ba nangyari, kung bakit nagkaroon ng breach. And kung may liability nga doon sa storage and the treatment of data, may corresponding penalty yon. Accountability. Now, personal information controller shall be responsible for any data under its custody. Kaya nga, di ba may naka-assign na data privacy officer for any organization. Kasi dapat yung data privacy officer trained siya on how to collect, treat, store, and on how to disclose the data also. Responsible din siya dun sa mga reporting mechanisms or notification requirements that the government will require depending on the kind of institution or organizations. Yun, data designate, yan, sinabi ko na kanina na may data privacy officer para may point person lang. Of course, it also helped, siguro I'll proceed to these liabilities and penalties. You can just look sa batas kung ano yung mga penalty niya, pero ito yung mga liabilities: improper disposal of information, processing of information for unauthorized purpose, unauthorized processing of personal or sensitive information kasi walang consent, for example, accessing data due to negligence. So halimbawa dun sa enrollment system ng school, na-hack yon because walang safety mechanism in place. Walang policy yung school on how to guard or make sure that data is secured. Then pwedeng mag-fall under accessing data due to negligence. Concealment of security breach involving sensitive information is also a liability. So marami yan, mga basta anything that compromises the personal data of sensitive information, personal privileged information of the data subject, there's a corresponding liability and penalty for that. So now, ito kasi gusto ko sanang madaanan before my 30 minutes up. So ano yung mga recommendations ko before, during my presentation in PAPSAS for higher education institution? Of course, una, to conduct a privacy impact assessment. So before, for sure, the Ateneo system has data privacy policy already. But for other organizations, dapat simulan natin doon sa assessment. Meron ba tayong mga infrastructure or a policy regarding data protection? Kung wala pa, kailangan mag-assess kung ano yung kailangan pang gawin. Pangalawa, dapat gumawa ng privacy knowledge management program. So, depending on the result of the assessment, ano yung effective and efficient program for the kind of organization that will protect the data of the subject matter, of the data subject. And pangatlo, dapat may internal data privacy manual based on the DPA provisions ng batas. So, ito na yung kumbaga magiging responsibility ng data privacy officer to ensure that that the result of the assessment and the program that will be implemented, meron siyang manual na pagbabasehan para we leave less discretion to the data privacy officer on how to operationalize this data privacy system. And pang-apat, determine if the higher educational institution is required to register. Kasi di ba kanina, depende kung anong nature ng organization. May mga certain organizations that are exempted doon sa registration requirement. May mga institutions that are required. So kailangan alam din yun ng organization. Appoint and train your data privacy officer. Ito, very important. Ang dami namang mga free trainings conducted by government para lang din ma-ensure na yung system sa school are in compliance with the Data Privacy Act, and incorporate also in the DPA or in all data collection forms, blah, 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 yung may tinatawag na yun na template. So, sa lahat, basta any activity that you will get information from the subject, data subject, kailangan may naka-incorporate na yan doon. So, sa amin, even yung mga attendance sheets, registration link, kung online man siya, even yung consent doon sa pagkuha ng photo sa mga events, sa mga seminars, nakalagay na yan doon para in the future, if any one of the participants complain na sabihin na hindi siya kinuna ng consent, nandun na yun sa dapat binasa niya rin yung undertaking na binibigay niya yung consent na i-process yung information, that photo will also be taken during the event, and it will be posted sa social media accounts, ganyan. So, para protected yung organization, and at the same time, we are respecting the data of the person na nagpa-participate dun sa mga program ng school or ng organization. So, yan yung mga basic and I think practical policy recommendation that I can recommend for not only the higher educational institutions but all organizations para ma-practice natin yung pag-protect sa data rights of the subject, of the data subject. So sometimes we see napaka-tedious naman ng requirement, but babalikan natin yung public policy ng batas kung bakit may mga ganitong requirements. And from there, we will be appreciating the purpose of why these provisions are being required in the law and sa mga iba pang mga memorandum circulars after this law. Now, kanina, itahi ko lang, because of the hyper connectivity, because of the everyone and everything is shifting to online, tumaas din yung activities. Lahat, sinasabi ko nga kanila, lahat ay online na ngayon, pati pagbebenta ng mga pananim, plant, online na, lahat, food, online na. So tumaas din yung activities online, pati yung cybercrime, pati yung violations ng data privacy. It finds ngayon relevance, these two particular laws, because many activities now are shifted online. And the organization, including the higher education institution, should also look into the internal system kung compliant ba dito sa mga batas na to. And what areas in the management of the higher education are most likely vulnerable to abuse or violation, so that we can or see how to improve yung mga policies in place dun sa school. This will also protect not only the institution, but of course from the unnecessary expense kung nagkaroon ng violation, di ba? Lalo na ngayon na students are very vocal in terms of highlighting yung mga lapses ng administration. For sure, the school many of the schools encounter mga issues regarding cyber libel committed, supposed to be or allegedly cyber libel committed by students, and the other way around, the school against the data privacy of the student also. So kailangan malinaw yung polisiya ng school that it's in accordance with what is being provided by the law. So yun, kaya siya naging relevant kasi tumaas nga, and nakita niyo naman kanina yung high traffic in the online world. So, and for sure, pinag-aaralan na din ng Congress and ng Senado kung ano yung pwedeng maging amendments sa batas, especially so that many of the activities are now shifted online. So, okay, so I understand I only have 30 minutes for this presentation. I try my best to compress it into the time allocated for this presentation. But I'll be ready to answer if you have questions during the question and answer portion at the latter part of the program. Again, I'm Dion, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Attorney Romano, for that very informative talk. I am sure that the students are now informed of the risks and challenges that cyberspace poses. If you have questions or insights for Attorney Romano, you will have the chance to share them during our open forum later. Our final speaker is a researcher, associate professor, and an advocate of responsible use of media. She is a graduate of Bachelor of Arts in Development Communication at the Ateneo de Naga University. She took up her master's degree in public administration in the same university. In 2016, she earned her doctorate degree in social development at the Philippine Women's University. She has various involvement in the field of research and development communication as resource person, paper presenter, trainer, and participant. Currently, she is the chairperson of the Department of Media Studies of the Ateneo de Naga University. Since 2013, she has been a member of the Association of Development Communication Educators and Practitioners, Philippines, and the Philippine Society of Public Administration. To share with us on social media ethics and digital etiquettes, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Maria Filipinas H. Bana.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bana, and my task this afternoon is to present to you the digital etiquette in the new normal. So the title of this presentation is Digital Etiquette in the New Normal. Okay, and my objectives in this presentation are the following. Now, I'd like to walk you through the what, the why, and the how. What digital etiquette is and what is in the new normal, and why is it so important at these times, and how we can be all responsible digital citizens. Okay, so first off, what is digital etiquette, or the more commonly known netiquette? Digital etiquette or netiquette is a basic set of rules pertaining to behavior that needs to be followed to ensure the internet is better for all users. It is also defined as the use of good manners in online communication such as email, forums, blogs, and social networking sites. So basically, we get the idea that netiquette would be internet etiquette. No? So it's a set of rules that tell us what is good and bad and what is right and wrong in the online cyberspace. So specifically at these times, digital etiquette has been changed. No? It has become something that is of more importance and something that calls for our attention. In the new normal, according to Turk, no, in the article in the New York Times entitled "How the Coronavirus is Changing Digital Etiquette," he has summarized the effects into three things. Now, first, he said that we have pivoted to video conferencing, and we have all noticed this. No, while we are already familiar with video calls before with Skype and other with the messenger video calls, we're familiar with that. But it is now that we have really seen that abrupt shift to the use of video conferencing tools, primarily because we wanted to continue with our operations. So we wanted to work, we wanted to still continue education, and we want to still communicate with one another. And therefore, there's a sudden shift and need of video conferencing. And then second, we are rethinking work and school culture. So we still have to work, and so we are trying to get the hang of working from home. And in terms of schooling, we have this education 4.0. No, all of us are struggling, teachers and students alike. We are all struggling in order to survive this education, even in this pandemic. And then the third, social media is louder than ever. And we are all witnesses, to this. Social media is filled with people who are very expressive, in their opinions. And the thing is, the pandemic has placed almost all of us or most of us in the social media. It has replaced our gatherings, it has replaced our social interactions. The physical presence of one another has been replaced with our online presence in this social media. And so, therefore, all the more that we have to set new guidelines, for behavior in how we can appropriately conduct ourselves in the social media. Okay, some interesting facts. According to Thompson, in Psychology Today, 55% of communication is made up of body language, and 38% is made up of the tone of voice, and only 7% form the actual words. And so this is very interesting because it will show us that actually we lose 93% of communication online. When you put together the 55% body language and 38% voice, then it means that we lose these 93% online because our body language and our tone of voice is not evident in the words, which are what's left now in the online. So here, words become the sole mechanism for communication, mostly in the online, especially in the written form. And therefore, misunderstandings occur without body language and the tone of voice. So it is very likely that there will be misunderstandings. And another effect that we have to be aware of is the online disinhibition effect. Now, this is according to Soler back in 2004. So he has concluded that people disclose or act out more frequently, at times more intensely, when they are online. And we would all agree to this, right? Because being, what do you call that, protected by a certain anonymity online, we become more disinhibited. We become bolder in our choice of words. We become more upfront in matters, in matters online, and therefore this could lead to misunderstandings. Okay, so with all these effects of the pandemic and our existence in our more immersed experience in online, netiquette has become more important because it is critical to keeping up good relations and building and maintaining relationships. We still have to continue getting along with others in order to at least have that sense of normalcy in our lives. And netiquette also is vital in avoiding miscommunication. So just imagine if we lose our nonverbal cues, which in fact communicate more than our verbal cues, then we would be very prone to miscommunication, and netiquette would help us avoid that, or at least minimize. And then the lack of netiquette can cause substantial problems in the workplace and schooling. Okay, so let me present to you the 10 core rules of netiquette by She and She in 2015, and also first presented in 1994. And I have modified it a bit by comparing it to our profile as Atenean. So I'd call this the Atenean and the 10 core rules of netiquette. What I did was to present the 10 core rules by Virginia She and use our context in the examples and in the tips that I'd like every one of us to do. Okay, the Atenean, as we all know, is competent. No? And our competence says that the Atenean uses technological advances in a moral and ethical manner. And with this competence, we would see three of Virginia Shee's core rules of netiquette, one of which is know where you are in cyberspace. Okay, so the etiquette required may vary from domain to domain. Knowing where you are in cyberspace means that we have to be aware that there are a lot of different domains in the internet, in the online world, and that we are expected to behave appropriately in each of these domains. Okay, I think the easiest way to explain this would be to see how we are expected to um, arrange our messages in email where there is a certain formality expected or a certain official vibe, no, in our composition, no, of message, and compare that with how we can be freer, no, in the chat room. So this would be an example of knowing where you are in cyberspace. We can be more, we can be freer to be ourselves in the chat room, for example, and be a bit more formal and corporate in the email. Okay? Second, make yourself look good online. This has nothing to do with being, physically pleasant, but it has more to do with thinking about the digital hereafter. Plan your digital hereafter. Make sure that you are leaving nice and good digital footprints that you will not regret later. As we all know, no matter how we delete posts after we changed our minds, um, chances are some people or at least an individual might have already done a screenshot of your post and immortalized it, by saving it in a private message or sending it to others, no, that would be worse. So the thing is, we have to make ourselves look good online. This is not a pretentious way of presenting ourselves, but it is just trying to, not regret, what our digital footprints are later. Okay. Also, share expert knowledge. We have the information highway as a very powerful tool, which allows us to get answers of our questions, anytime we want. There would be some. I've encountered some bad examples of bad netiquette where people ask questions that are actually Googleable. So it's like it's saying that if you can Google it first and not ask it, from other people. So there are netiquettes that are that strict, no. But here, when we say share expert knowledge, it has to do with sharing information that you think you are conversant about, and sharing this to people whom you think will find the information very useful. And most importantly, please fact check. No, do not be a sharer of fake news. Okay, and we try to be original for the most part. And if we would need references, of course, make sure that they are reputable and scholarly and cite them. Okay? For the conscience, of the Atenean lives a life of exemplary integrity by cultivating an upright conscience. And according to Virginia Shee, the guru of internet etiquette, she said that we have to always remember the human. We always have to consider the golden rule: do unto others what you would have others do unto you. Always remember that, even in the online space. And in Ateneo, we have cura personalities. We have been taught to care, to exercise care for the person. And so therefore in this, we don't use offensive language in the internet, in the social media, and more so, we don't bully, no? The OSA has been repetitively reminding us and the students to, not subscribe to cyberbullying. Okay, so we always remember the human. It is very easy to feel that we are strongly mediated by the channel of the internet, and sometimes we forget that the people beyond that channel are, real people with real emotions, and we think that they might not be hurt because anyway we're not face to face. But the thing is, we are still person to person in the social media. Okay. Second, adhere to the same standards of behavior online that you follow in real life. Okay. Whatever you consider as good and bad or right and wrong in the real life, the same apply in the social media or in the internet. Okay, so we don't do anything illegal. We don't distribute illegal materials online, and we honor intellectual property rights. No, we don't infringe copyright. We don't plagiarize. Okay, and these actually are illegal things. Now, there's a corresponding law that will spell out sanctions to this, and we have to abide by the honor code, especially nowadays, no, in an online education scheme. Online assessments are difficult to do, and it's a struggle, no, for teachers, and we only rely to the honor code of the students that you will really abide by this, and that you will genuinely go through the assessments on your own without cheating. Okay. Next, respect other people's time and bandwidth. Okay, we consider the other's connectivity. As you may have noticed, your teachers, in the Ateneo have been instructed to, as much as possible, limit the synchronous session to only an hour a week per subject. And also, we have been instructed to try to provide you materials that will require the smallest bandwidth possible, now, so that you will not have difficulty accessing or downloading this online. And for your end, no, the students, respecting other people's bandwidth could be as simple as being on time, no, in your online classes, in your meetings, or in webinars, no, such as this. We have to be on time. No, we cannot exercise Filipino time here because bandwidth is precious and it is not so fluid, no, here in the Philippines. And also, please pay attention. No, when you are in your online classes, it's very easy to be tempted to multitask, no, especially if your video is turned off anyway. Your teacher can see you. But the thing is, multitasking is not anymore recommended, no, nowadays. It says that you will be more efficient if you do one task at a time, because you gain much, no, when you are paying attention to that one thing. So if you are here in this webinar, for example, pay attention. Okay. Second, respect other people's privacy. Okay, we have to be in the know of the data privacy. We have to know that there are personal information that makes people easily identifiable, and this might not be within their consent, not to be divulged, no, by others. Okay, so we have to be knowledgeable of this, and we have to adhere to this. And of course, do not steal someone's identity online. No, this is illegal. This is spelled out in the Cybercrime Prevention Act. Okay. For compassionate commitment to change, it says that the Atenean acts on the world in freedom, responsibility, and community to build a good society. So here we have to help keep flame wars under control. Okay, be mindful and respectful in civil disagreements. Flaming is acceptable. No, I think we've seen this many times, and we witness this daily in social media. People can feel very strongly about many things or many issues in the society, and it is their freedom, no, of expression to be angry, to be disappointed. No, they can express very strong emotions online. It's within their rights. But flame wars is something that what we want to avoid. No, we don't want people attacking one another because of their differences, and we don't want people being sarcastic, no, to people just to win arguments. No, so what we do is healthy debate. We agree to disagree, and if you can't engage in a healthy debate, then don't engage in a debate altogether. So we want to be mindful and respectful even in civil disagreements. Okay? And in Christ-centeredness, of course, the Atenean lives out the gospel values and the teachings of Christ. And in the core rules of etiquette, there are two things that has to do with this. One, don't abuse your power. And it says that the more power and control you have, the more important it is to know how to use it. And you see, in the internet or in the online space, um, power has to do more with our capacity to access and the capacity to control the information and to use this to influence others. And so, therefore, the more we are able to access and control information, and the more people we can influence with this information, then the more important it is for us to fact check and to, not use our authority to leverage on this information to get what we want, for example. So there, don't abuse your power. And then lastly, be forgiving of other people's mistakes. Do not engage in a trial by publicity. You know, you see, trial by publicity happens even in social media. It does not only happen in, the electronic media, which we know. It's also happening in social media now, where, certain individuals get the impression of guilt, or innocence, even without the verdict of the court of law. And this happens most especially with people with influence, and we don't want that. We don't want to engage and contribute to this trial by publicity. We want to be collegial and supportive of one another. Okay, so there, I think my 15 minutes is done, and I'll just leave this quote by Alexander McCall Smith. He said that manners are the basic building blocks of civil society. So the foundation of our new normal will be the same. It will be our values, and our values will help us easily decide what is right and what is wrong. Okay? Thank you very much. These are my references, and all my image references are from Canva Free Media. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bana. I hope that given your inputs, people would make conscious efforts to practice and share these proper netiquettes in engaging in social media and in using other information and communication technologies. That completes the first part of our webinar. We hope that after gaining knowledge of relevant laws and etiquettes and practical safety tips in using the internet and the social media, we would become more committed to becoming responsible digital citizens.
Good afternoon once again. We now would like to invite everyone to stay on for our open forum part. But before we proceed to the open forum, let us acknowledge first the presence of national and regional officers of PAPSAS. Thank you, PAPSAS, for joining us, especially to our regional president, Sir Randy Iniego. We also would like to acknowledge participating students and student affairs practitioners from Bicol, from other parts of the country, and even from overseas. We have a number of participants from various schools in Bicol, in Metro Manila, Cebu, Siquijor, Leyte, and Davao. We also have a participant from Bundelkhand University in India. Thank you for joining us. We also acknowledge viewers from Commission on Higher Education, Region 5, especially Dr. Maria Pamela Viñas, education supervisor. Of course, participants from the Department of Education, from LGU Caramoan, from COMELEC, and DILG. We also acknowledge the presence of our dear students from the CAFP, the College Ignatian Formation Program, and the NSTP, or the National Service Training Program of Ateneo de Naga University. We now proceed to the open forum proper. At this point, may I invite our participants to share questions, reactions, or comments on uh, any part of the talk of our speakers. Since the activity is timely and relevant to our context today, we highly encourage everyone to share their insights, their reflections, reactions, no, or questions. No. If you are shy, you may also want to write your comments or questions on the chat box. Just check the comment section below. You can also do that. Uh, we now would like to invite our resource speakers to get ready for the open forum. Attorney Guiang, Attorney Romano, and Dr. Bana. To allow us to engage into meaningful conversation this afternoon, we have invited a lineup of reactors and sharers. The first one is Dr. Renelyn B. Salcedo. She is the Vice President of Student Affairs, or for Student Affairs and Services of Faith Colleges in Batangas. Thank you for joining us, ma'am. She is also the Vice President for Private Universities and Colleges of PAPSAS. Ma'am Renlyn.
Hey, good afternoon. I will now give my reaction. Good afternoon, everyone. The theme and the topics being discussed are all very relevant and timely to both students and student affairs practitioners. Schools play a very important role in the implementation of this law. So that is why schools must post online and offline notices and release a specific memo pertaining to this law, so that students must know their rights and know when to assert their rights. In this law, anyone can be an offender, whether you're a person in authority, a subordinate, or a student. It is good that we have a law that protects us if we are harassed. Whether we are in a private or public place, we have a safe, inviolable place or space around our body that can only be entered with our consent online or offline. It is a must that educational institutions must create an independent internal mechanism or a committee on decorum and investigation, so that there is a committee who will specifically investigate and address complaints, particularly for this concern. So even with or without formal complaints, or even if a victim does not want to file a complaint or does not request the school to take any action, as a school, it is our obligation to investigate possible abusers and resolve the situation, because it is our responsibility to protect the rights of our students, as well as discipline those students who are not adhering to the rules and regulations of our respective institutions. The school must be a safe place, both online and offline. So as educational institutions, we are compelled to deal with hostile environment made known by just reasonable knowledge of someone committing gender-based sexual harassment or sexual violence. Probably, some are still wondering what will schools look like under the new normal. More than 1.5 billion students and young learners worldwide are affected by school and university closures due to the coronavirus disease 2019, or the COVID-19 pandemic. In the Philippines alone, the COVID-19 crisis has affected about 27 million learners, 1 million teachers and non-teaching staff, including student affairs practitioners, as well as the families of learners. The disruption caused by COVID-19 has forced us to adapt to an online learning. And as COVID-19 continues to impact communities around the world, one of the one of the places that was the first to be disrupted are the schools. So our classes now are being conducted through web video conferencing and with the use of learning management systems. With the increase in the number of social media time and exposure, cybercrime violations are also bound to increase. So we have to be more extra careful and use social media and other online platforms responsibly. Data privacy is the new normal. Privacy will grow from being about compliance to a set of behavior that schools and students must embrace. Nevertheless, the processing of teacher and students' personal data should be in adherence to the principles of transparency, legitimate purpose, and proportionality. Parents and students must know their rights, no, in relation to the processing of their personal data. And as mentioned by our speaker, we have the following rights, no? Right to be informed, right to object, right to access, right to rectify, the right to erasure or blocking, right to damages, right to data portability, and right to file a complaint. So these rights were thoroughly discussed to us by Attorney Romano. And with this discussion of our data privacy rights, I hope we will not become a victim. So let us remember that it's important that we know how to protect ourselves online, especially nowadays, that we are using different media in the delivery of teaching and learning. At the end of the day, we all hope for nation building built on the respect of fundamental rights, and at the core of which is the right to privacy. With the increase in the number of hours in uses of online platforms, schools must establish new guidelines and policies pertaining to online behavior of students. So even before that our students have in-person or face-to-face classes, there are a number of violations being committed online. So even more now that we are in an extraordinary circumstance. We have to practice the value of competence by using technology in a moral and ethical manner, use our conscience by being human and more humane, and practice the golden rule. In this extraordinary time, we have to be more compassionate by being more mindful and respectful of our words and always put Christ in the center of our life. We have to remember and live out the gospel, the values and teachings of Jesus Christ. So with the current situation that we are facing right now, let us always practice grit. No? Grit means go for responsible information technology. So lastly, thank you to all our speakers for providing us inputs, ideas, and relevant recommendations on how we will go through this new normal in education. So with that, good afternoon and God bless everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salcedo. Indeed, knowledge, our awareness of our rights and responsibilities is our first line of defense, our protection, as you said. Thank you, ma'am. Our next reactor is Mr. Andrew Macalma, the University Registrar of St. Louis University in Baguio and the Corporate Secretary of PAPSAS. Sir, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Go ahead, sir.
Uh, Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Greeting you from the City of Pines here in Baguio City. Um, Thank you very much for the invitation. And indeed, this is a blessed day, blessed afternoon, especially for us in the Student Affairs and Services, and of course, definitely for everyone who are actually here, either, of course, in the Philippines or outside the Philippines. First, I'd like to say congratulations and thank you to Attorney Dion, Dr. Bana, and Attorney Guiang They're actually a good blend of our speakers today. And of course, they have really done well in terms of course, giving justice to the topics assigned to them. Now, as for me, no, first, of course, I have to mention that somehow, as mentioned by our facilitator, indeed, this is a timely and relevant set of topics, especially for administrators, the young people who are actually in schools right now, online schools. No? For administrators, well, of course, this is a chance for us to be able to revisit our policies and probably in the creation of new policies for the school. It's not yet too late, especially, of course, I understand that somehow we were challenged by Attorney Dion earlier on. We have to keep up, especially with our data privacy, if and when we have not yet actually placed our policies on that one. And for our students, well, this afternoon is a very important source of knowledge, no? Knowledge about the right and the wrongs, what are, of course, prohibited by the law, and at the same time, to become a source of information, especially for our family and peers, especially that somehow they may not be able to make it here. And since we are blessed to be in this convocation this afternoon, I guess the challenge right now is for us to be able to share the knowledge and the information. Now, it has always been this, no? We know the existence of such laws. We know them by name. We can even memorize the numbers. But the problem is that we just know them and we don't go to the specifics. And we'd like to be, again, to say thank you to our speakers today because they have given us the gist of the laws and at the same time what we need to get to understand right now. I hope that tickles everyone's minds now to really go into the net because I know these are available to really read and eventually understand the importance of this. Why? Because this has connection to everyone's safety and security. Number two, thank you very much to the speakers and to Ateneo de Naga for helping us triage our minds, our wisdom, and of course, even our priorities. Because I understand in the realm of health, triage means sorting out of the patients according to the urgency of the need. But we need to be triage. I think this is one good lesson we need to learn now. The time to triage also our priorities in order, no? From the order of projects on the basis of where funds and other resources can be best used, are most needed or are most likely to achieve success. I guess this time it tells us to refocus, especially on this very important, these exigent matters right now that we have actually handled today, because of course it has much connection, especially to the lives of our students who are online. Especially that at this most challenging time, especially in the field of education, we need to prioritize knowledge of these laws and at the same time, all these policies. Thirdly, the challenge indeed is in keeping these things, no? Not only because we must, but we have to remember it's the law. But foremost, it is about being good as human beings. I think I remember Dr. Ren ending with the words to be humane and to be human. I think there's also a challenge for us to become inclusive so that everybody would feel safe and valued. And of course, trying to really make this alive is everyone's responsibility. For administration, to include these laws whenever we implement or create policies for the schools. For students, to practice it until it becomes part of the air that we breathe. No? Indeed, there's a big challenge for everyone to become forefronts and models in the society, community, and in the online world. So let's try to contribute to the creation of safe spaces. And by doing so, we create a visibility of heaven here on earth. And the last thing is, I guess it's doable. It is. And this is, of course, fostered when every one of us will really seriously do our part. No? As Ateneans, I think you are our main audience today. And of course, for everyone, you have proven that many times, no, that you can become formidable self-starters and initiators. I think you have the magis or the magi thing, no, to help you out with this one. So go on, help others triage also themselves so that all will be well. So again, thank you very much for this opportunity and congratulations to the organizers. And of course, maraming salamat din po sa ating mga respected speakers. Once again, greeting you from Baguio City. Keep safe and maghugas po tayo ng kamay.
Thank you, Sir Andrew. Thank you for the very inspiring, encouraging speech comment. No, uh, indeed, no, we are being challenged to uh, remember who we are as human beings, no, as being created in God's image and likeness. Thank you, sir. Um, may we now call on our next reactor, a student. He is the current president of Remontados Debate Society of Ateneo Naga University, Mr. Jerwin Roy Villacruz. Thank you, Jerwin, for joining us.
Hello, everyone. Um, I'm Jereen Villacruz, a second year BSBA Legal Management student in the university. I'd like to thank OSA for inviting me as a reactor in today's forum, and I'd like to thank as well the speakers for the comprehensive discussion in terms of the S- Safe Space Act, the Data Privacy Act, and the Etiquette in Social Media and Ethics as well. In order to utilize the expertise of our resource speakers, I like to ask questions, and my question shall be addressed to Attorney Guiang, who talked about the Safe Space Act. All right, so my question will revolve on the salient points of the penalties, because as Attorney Guiang said, that such leads to the appreciation of legal safeguards, because penalties are forms of deterrence. All right, so Attorney Guiang talked about the legal remedies a victim of GOSH or gender-based online sexual harassment may exhaust. These remedies are in accordance with RA 11313 or the Safe Space Act. In Section 24 of the Act, or in Section 24 of RA 11313, with the heading liability of students, it provides that the minor students who are found to have committed acts of gender-based sexual harassment shall only be held liable for administrative sanctions by the school as stated in the school handbook. This provision entails two things. First, it expressly limits the liability of a minor student guilty of the enumerated offense to administrative sanctions, so it does not include criminal or civil liability. But secondly, it provides that it is the school sanction that will govern as a remedy. This applies when there is a minority status on the part of the offending party. However, in the section 15 of the same law, item B, it provides that if the offended party is a minor, the penalty next higher in degree will be imposed on the guilty party. So the maximum penalty of 4 years and 2 months, which is the penalty of prison correctional in its medium period, will be upgraded. I have three questions, which, if I may suggest, be answered like one over a time. The first question is, in a case where both the offended and the offending party is a minor, which penalty governs? The administrative sanction in Section 24 or the upgraded penalty of prison correctional in Section 15, Item B?
Okay, thank you very much for that first question. So the provision that will govern when we're talking about the penalty would be the first section that you mentioned. So if the offender is a minor, the penalty will only be the administrative sanctions provided in the handbook. So there are parang dalawa yung perspective mo from here. So, example, if the offended party or the victim naman is a minor, that's when you increase the penalty. And that contemplates a situation where the minor is a victim and then essentially hindi minor yung offender. So, dalawa siyang aspects, basically. Dalawang point of view siya. Is that clear?
Yes, attorney.
The short answer to your question would be, for the penalty, it would be the administrative sanction that we will follow. So essentially, hindi naman sila contradicting. I think the confusion arose from that. Hindi sila conflicting. So the first section refers to the penalty to the offending party na hindi minor kapag ang victim ay minor. And then the penalty for administrative sanction that looks into kapag yung offender is a minor. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, thank you, Attorney Guiang. But in terms of a case where both of them are minors, what could be the possible remedy?
If both of them are okay, so here's the thing also. If both of them are minors, we're taking a look at it na the case that will be filed by the victim is the Safe Spaces Act. So if the minor will use the Safe Spaces Act in asserting his or her rights, and the offending party is also a minor, then it will only be the administrative sanction. However, to clarify, the victim can still make use of other laws, which would necessarily mean na hindi limited yung remedy niya against a minor violator to get lang administrative sanction. So, iba-iba eh. May iba pang possible remedies in other laws which the minor can utilize, and the penalty will not necessarily be limited to the administrative sanctions.
Okay. So thank you, attorney. For the second level is in case where the student handbook provides a clause that nothing in the rules shall preclude the victim from instituting a separate and independent action for damages and other affirmative relief. How can that be made to apply in relation to Section 24's restriction of liability to administrative sanction and its provision that what is governing is the policy of the student handbook?
Sorry, the first part is what if hindi
The
the
case
first part
is
of
the case is uh, in a case where the student handbook provides a clause that nothing in the rules shall preclude the victim from instituting a separate and independent action for damages and other affirmative relief. How can that be made to apply in relation to Section 24's restriction of liability to administrative sanctions? Because I understand that in the case of Ateneo, in the implementation of the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, there is that clause that it says that it's not only limited to school like sanction. It can the victim may also result in like exhaust other remedies like legal remedies. So in this case, how can that be made to apply in relation as well to Section 24's restriction?
Okay. So for this aspect, I know it seems that there could be a contradiction. It appears at first glance that they are contradicting. However, if you take a look at it, the the provision that there is nothing that prohibits the victim from filing an independent action. So that contemplates na the minor can file for recovery of damages, yung magpa-file ka para makakuha ka ng danyos. And the provision that you cited on the administrative sanction does not remove that remedy from the minor. So in other words, the minor can still file for action for damages.
Okay, thank you, attorney. For the last question is with respect to the Section 36 Item D of the Republic Act 11313. That Section 36 Item D, it provides that the cases of gauche is imprescriptible. Right. So the question is, if the liability of the guilty minor is limited only to, assuming that it's limited only to administrative sanctions imposed by the school on the basis of his or her minority, thus the imprescriptibility of gauche allow the victim to file a criminal action and claim for civil liability when the offending party enters into the legal age. So there are two things that has to be considered. One, that at the time of the commission of the offense, the offender was a minor. And secondly, at the time that the action was filed, the offending party is already in a legal age.
Okay. So for that, what will be the resolution would be this. So the imprescriptibility that you cited for commission of GOSH only applies to the criminal action. But at the same time, the person will only be liable. Yung reckoning point mo ng determination of liability is at the time that it was committed. So that's a very interesting question. I appreciate that you have been reading through the laws and the provisions. And that's actually a very interesting point because when you, parang gusto mo nga maging abogado, I like it. Pero yeah, so interesting point, but you will be reckoning the determination of the imprescriptibility or, well, taking into consideration the minority exemption, quote unquote, from the time that the offense was committed. So, gets ba? So, in this instance, technically, since he or she was a minor when the act was committed, hindi pa rin mag-a-apply sa kanya yung imprescriptibility because at that point in time, the penalty that should be imposed on him or her is just the administrative sanctions.
Okay. Thank
I
you
hope.
so much, Attorney, for your sharing your expertise to us. Thank you.
Thank you for your very interesting questions. Para akong nagre-recite din.
Thank you,
Thank,
pa.
thank you, Jerwin, for helping us tease out details, no, and explore nuances of the law. Thank you also to Attorney Guiang for responding. Uh, at this point, we'd like to just check if Dr. Pamela Viñas of Commission of Higher Education would like to say something or ask or probably share with us her reaction. Dr. Pam, are you still with us?
Yun.
Yeah, I think uh, Dr. Pam?
Did you call for me?
Yes po.
Sorry.
Do you have something to share or
Yes.
would you like to comment or ask questions? Feel free po, to address any of our resource speakers.
I'd like to congratulate Ateneo, the Naga University and PAPSAS for the very enlightening afternoon. And I commend the speakers as well for sharing us those issues on the laws, especially because there are many changes happening now. No? So just a few weeks ago or last week, we were talking about is it okay to be posting the pictures of students uh, who are on Zoom? No, so and is it okay to share some information of the students? And this afternoon, there are many issues really that became also clear to me as an educator, as a supervisor for education. I just hope that many educators and many students would really go through this video, no, on streamlined on your Facebook, so that they could also understand better the responsibilities of being an online educator. So also for the students to also know their rights, no? Um, so congratulations and thank you again. We look forward to another session with OSA. No, thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ma'am Pam, for joining us and for your message you're sharing. Uh, we also would like to, we still have a couple of reactors. I think both of them are students. One is from Universidad de Santa Isabel, um, Ms. Graciela Chua, the Minister on Student Welfare on Central Student Government, of the Central Student Government. Grace, are you still with us? Miss Grace.
Yes po. Hello.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction, sir. So once again, I am Graciela Chua from Universidad de Santa Isabel with the position Minister on Student Welfare of the Central Student Government. So I am a second year nursing student in the university. First, I would like to thank the organizers and the resource speakers for sharing what they know about their topic because obviously they have given it much justice. Okay, so we have three topics here. We have the Safe Spaces Act, the cybercrime and data privacy, and of course the digital etiquette that this topic is very pertinent considering the fact that we have shifted from face-to-face interactions to it is without a doubt that we are still really adjusting to this new setup. The students, the teachers, the families, and even businesses. So I also believe that the first two topics were very comprehensive and they really dwelled on it's always good to think about our right because they would usually serve as protection, knowing the fact that we are on this cyber world most of the time. Okay, so for the second topic, the cybercrime and data privacy, we are not just talking about actually the websites. We are also talking about these platforms wherein we could use them for video or voice call meetings. So we also have to really look into their terms and agreements because we're not just getting whatever data they could have from the users. For the third topic, digital etiquettes and being a student who has being a student myself and being this avid user of social media platforms, I I have really noticed the increase of negative feedbacks and comments regarding the attitudes of netizens. So it wouldn't hurt for us to actually practice our netiquettes when interacting with various people online. Most importantly, our teachers. So, for example, we actually have to keep in mind of our grammar, but not in terms of grammatical errors, but more like how we are to perceive the message we are trying to convey. We are trying to minimize the capitalizations because whether we like it or not, we are actually giving this other message for those who are not really aware. So it wouldn't really hurt to be a bit more sensitive when it comes to presenting yourself and presenting your message on this cyber world that we are usually in today. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Rochella, for your reaction. I think the other side also, I think, is we could also um, be try to be more conscious of the way we interpret the messages. So, but yes, that's a striking point, a very um, relevant point. Um, the last and the I think she's the last, no? The last reactor sharer is the Vice President for Administration of Supreme Student Council of Bicol State College of Applied Sciences and Technology. Um, we have with us Miss Maria Danica Elaine A. Castillo. Thank you for joining us. Danica?
Hi, sir.
Hello
Good
po.
afternoon. Good afternoon po. Before anything else, I would like to say thank you to the people that made this webinar possible and to our resource speakers for lending us their knowledge. Being part of this activity, this is such a privilege. So let me start my insight and realization about this webinar. So the global pandemic that we are all facing has truly affected our lives. This catastrophe has hindered the norms of every family. People in general also feel anxious battling with the unseen enemy, the coronavirus. It caused people to feel very much agitated thinking about ways on how they can survive. The consequences of this pandemic were evident in our daily and normal routine. More particularly, it created dramatic changes in our life. Almost everything is done online. Through this seminar, it made me grasp and to the idea that we, as part of the netizens, that in every stand we make, kasi ang dami nating issues ngayon, especially about our national government, kung saan napupunta yung budget, ano nangyayari sa pag-increase ng COVID cases, diba? Kung anong ginagawa nila actions about that. And it is easier for us to reach people with our opinions. In just one click, one post, we can reach a lot of people. We have friends and our friends can see it. And at the same time, they can share it to their friends, diba? In the social media. Still, even though we are in the easier medium of spreading our word, so still we must continuously promote and be reminded by the basic knowledge, law, and etiquette that we need as consumers of social media to avoid harming others. It is essential to be prompt that in every millisecond it takes to post a content on our wall, there are weighed consequences after. This innovation that we are experiencing increases our dependence on it. Sabi nga po ng isa sa mga speaker na even yung news, dinedepende na natin sa social media, sa Facebook, kasi syempre ang ABS-CBN, nasa and all. So, nagiging mas easier yung access natin sa lahat ng information because of social media. So, unfortunately, sometimes we fail to realize that we are being reckless and naive on our accounts and forget that we can cause trouble. Sometimes nakakakita na ako ng sobrang harsh na comments and below the belt na jokes like, ang sarap naman ni Kuya, o kaya mga masyado nang nakaka-sexualize ng tao, nag-objectify na ng women and all. And at the same time, yung nang babash na mamatay ka na and all. So, ayun na nga. So, in just a click, it can change our life or someone else's. Sabi nga ng one of our speakers, my forever because of gosh. Like, what if today okay pa? Okay pa siya, hindi pa siya nakakapag-file ng complaint, but eventually ma-realize nila na offended sila and gusto nilang mag-file ng case towards you kasi nakasira ka ng buhay or ng reputation, and they had a proof. So we need to be aware of our actions online. So thank you to our speakers for enlightening us that in this new norm, we need to be more responsible of our actions because there are a lot of audiences who can witness and be affected by this act or post itself. So, and no one is exempted because of the law. So, and while listening, I have something in mind that there's a lot of people, maraming schools dito sa Naga, sa Nationals, but not all of us have the same opportunity to attend this kind of webinar that is able to equip us. But as part of the attendees, we need to start acting on it, from simple sharing of what we learned to our friends, posting something about it, and about sharing in the family while having the dinner. It can start a change. So respecting and equipping ourselves with knowledge is fundamental for a better digital citizenship. Know and assert our rights because anyone can be an offender and a victim. think before you click, as they say. Respect all forms and community. Let us lessen their mentality. Wall ko naman to. Wala silang pakialam kung anong ipopost ko. Bahala kayo sa buhay nyo. Or kung ayaw mo sa content ko, huwag mong basahin. Just leave it there. So let's stop this toxicity online. Let's start or move for a difference. Let's start from us being a responsible digital citizen by starting to give respect because we are humans. Online or in person, nothing changes. Kahit na anonymous ka and social media or whatsoever medium yan, the fact that we need to act appropriately online and at the same time in person. So, ang pinaka na-realize ko na may magagawa tayo at all times. It may be small or big steps. Still, it is a movement. Start with respect. And yun lang po. So, keep safe everyone. Yun lang po.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Danica. Siguro na-pick up ko naman sa share niya is that siguro it's also about overcoming certain mindsets, no, that seem to hinder us from creating culture of respect, no, especially online. Okay. So thank you very much, Danica, for your sharing and for joining us this afternoon. Um, at this point, may we open the floor to other participants who may want to ask questions. We can entertain one or two or three before we give the floor to the three speakers to give their short message or final words. May we know if anyone is willing to share, ask questions? Okay. I think siguro na-exhaust na si questions. I'm sure siguro meron pang mga gusto mag-share but siguro nahihiya na. Do we have any questions or comments from the chat box? If not, then siguro we invite Ma'am Pines to be the first one to give the final word or siguro short message, and then the other two speakers. Ma'am Pines?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, what is there to say? No, well, a lot have been raised by the reactors, and I'm very glad that not only that they have paid attention, but they have also raised a lot of real concerns, real observations in the social media and in the online space. No, so I think I'll always go home to core values, no, that we uphold. No, that's always going to be the framework. That will guide us in terms of making decisions on what will be right or wrong in the social media. Sometimes it becomes very difficult to address ethics in social media, especially because we have a lot of we differ in terms of background, and also we have different core values. So it's also sometimes challenging to decide what's ethical or not in the social media. But I think that in order to make things easy, we will always have to go back to the teachings of our respective schools, of our elders, of our parents, and in the end, it is us who's going to decide, and we will make decisions, and we will do these decisions, and this will be applied in all our actions in real life, so to speak, or even here in the social media. So there, we consider our core values as our framework. So that would be all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Pines, for reminding us. Yeah, ultimately, it's really the basics, no, the essentials. We go back to the spirit of the law, no, the values behind the laws that we follow, teaching us how to be humane, how to be human, how to be Christians. in the new normal. Thank you, Ma'am Pines. Attorney Dion.
Alright. Siguro yung last word ko na lang. Una, I'd like to thank Ateneo Naga University, the Office of Student Affairs, and the PAPSAS for organizing this webinar. Indeed, this is very relevant, especially that all of our activities are done online. And as much as I shared what I learned from the tools that I presented, I also learned from my colleagues or the other speakers, and of course the people who provided their insights during the reaction. I'm relieved that there's no question as difficult as April, but um, it just shows that our participants for this afternoon have paid attention to what we presented and agree that the issue or the topic about citizenship now is really more of how to become a responsible digital citizen, because our personality, our persona, parang it extend already. Parang yung presence natin in social media and in other digital platforms, it's our extension of our personality. So if we are responsible as in our actual physical selves, we should also be responsible in that space or extension of ourselves. Otherwise, yun nga, yung mga na-discuss namin, there will be corresponding um, accountability in case may mga violations. And for schools, for students, and for the administrator of the school, I hope that we can create a safe space, as mentioned by, as discussed by Attorney April, and also the ethics of how to conduct ourselves in the digital. And I hope also that our schools, the organization will also consider the policy recommendations we provided for to have a system on data protection and on how to avoid yung cybercrime. So again, thank you for all of you who listened, and good afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Dion. And the last but not the least, we have Attorney April.
Okay, so good afternoon again to everyone. First, I would like to thank the organizers again for organizing this webinar. And also, I would like to thank the reactors for their gracious comments and also their very interesting questions. Actually, this is maybe my first time of attending and being a presenter for a webinar, and I feel like it's very interesting to be participating in these kinds of activities, because us in the legal profession, or I think for those who are practicing, like for example me, I'm in corporate practice, we're not really and we're not really engaging in discussion with people whose lives are actually touched or affected by certain laws. So, in as much as as our talks have been interesting and hopefully meaningful to the participants of this webinar, I think it has also triggered something within us, the presenters, and I think Dion also agrees with this. So thank you for listening intently, and I'd appreciate it also if the student participants who were kind of shy today, if you could course through your comments or your questions on the law that was discussed, that would be, I would appreciate answering your questions. And let's dive more into this topic, because I think this shouldn't stop in a one-time webinar. It should be something that involves constant communication and constant coordination as well with school administrators, will be institutionalizing the mechanisms that are put in place in the Safe Spaces Act and also the cybercrime law. So yeah, so I'm just opening the door for future communication. I think you can reach me through the I think the OSA can provide my email, and then if you have more questions, I'm open to answering them. And as a final message, I think for the millennials like me, or millennials pa ba, or ano na, Gen Z, with the new normal, or even if not Gen Z actually, even it doesn't limit the growing use of social media is not limited to millennials. I could see vloggers who are quite older. So I could see people in TikTok who are not necessarily teenagers. So I think this law applies to a broad range of people. And I hope na we always keep in mind that basically the message of these laws are, if you could pinpoint, it's just really respecting other people, other people's privacy, other people's sense of identity. Yeah, so I think I'll close with that, and I hope to hearing from the participants or the organizers of this webinar. Thank you and have a nice day, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney April. It's a very nice way to end it, no? Back to humanity. Um, so that concludes our open forum part. Thank you again to our speakers. We look forward to having you once again in the next webinars. Also, thank you to our reactors and to those who participated this afternoon. We hope that we all learned something new, something empowering from this activity. To show our gratitude for our excellent resource speakers, for their effort, for their time, expertise, we now present this electronic certificate of appreciation. Please allow me to read the citations. First, for Attorney April. The certificate reads, the Office of Student Affairs, Ateneo de Naga University, in cooperation with the Philippine Association of Practitioners of Student Affairs and Services, or PAPSAS, Region 5, presents this certificate of appreciation to Attorney April Joy Guiang in grateful recognition of her generosity as resource speaker in the webinar Fostering Responsible Digital Citizenship in the New Normal, held on August 27, 2020, given on the same day at the Ateneo de Naga University, Naga City, Philippines. Signed by Ms. Janice Trasvalles, Program Officer for Student Welfare's Safety and Ethics, Mr. Randy P. Iniego, President of PAPSAS Region 5, Mr. Rodolfo Virtus Jr., Director of Student Affairs and PAPSAS Region 5 Vice President, and of course, by our Father Roberto Ezekiel Rivera of the Society of Jesus, University President, Ateneo de Naga University. The same citation is hereby presented to Attorney Dion Romano and to Dr. Maria Filipinas Bana. Thank you to the three of you for joining us this afternoon. Finally, we have come to the end of our program. To those who registered, e-certificates of the attendance will be provided to you after accomplishing the evaluation form. Please know that the link has already been sent to your emails. We hope that you not only enjoyed the seminar, but also gained new learnings and felt empowered. No? So together in this new normal, let us continue building a culture of respect, a culture of accountability, a culture of responsible citizenship. Thank you, everyone. Ingat and just mabalos po.